Welcome to George Mason University's Studio A. My name is Rick Davis, and today our guest is Aaron Peters, a television writer, producer, and consultant for such shows as The Simple Life, The Tom Green Show, Just Shoot Me, and Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Please welcome Aaron Peters.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So, just going back to the beginning, how did you first become interested in working in the TV industry?
Well, when I was in college, just like our audience out here, it was a sort of seminal time for the sitcom. So there was Friends, Seinfeld, that must-see TV block on NBC. And every Thursday night, all of my college friends, we'd all sit around and watch that whole block of TV, and I just loved doing that. And so in turn, my watching lots of TV turned into, maybe I should do this for a living. And from there, I was able to get an internship at Late Night with Conan O'Brien.
Oh, wow.
And so that was something that further fueled the fire, so to speak. But,
So was that actually your first professional gig, was it with Conan O'Brien?
well, it depends on how you define first professional gig, because I didn't get paid to do it. As an intern, I was there getting coffee, milk, snacks. I was actually working in the script department, so I would make photocopies of the script and the rundown every day and bring it down to the director and the AD and stuff like that. So
It must have been an incredible experience.
you know, it was interesting. It was an interesting time. This was back in 1994, and Late Night with Conan O'Brien wasn't doing so well. Tom Shales had given the show a really bad review. And the show's the show's ratings were not good. So the mood around the office was, well, maybe we'll get to do a show today. Maybe tomorrow the show will be canceled. And obviously since then the show went on to do great things. And then interesting twists have happened to Conan since then.
Yeah.
But the thing that was really amazing about being on the show at that time was the comedy writers that were writing for the show were particularly just fantastic. I think some of the best comedy writers that were working at the time were on that show and have since gone on to have tremendous writing careers.
Yeah, I thought that show kind of broke ground in a lot of late night formats and things. I mean, they were doing some really creative things.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of absurd stuff, stuff that I think folks who were enjoying late night programming at the time maybe weren't ready for. And then they became ready for it after the show stayed on the air for a year or so. But I think my inspiration for becoming a comedy writer first was just by being amongst all these incredibly talented writers at the time and being exposed to the writer's room and what that lifestyle of a comedy writer was like.
So a college government major, which you were,
Yes.
right, turns into a TV writer by osmosis?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it goes to show you that you don't have to do the thing that you were majoring in order to actually get into the career you're interested in.
Room full of politicians here.
Oh, really? Oh, that's good.
We'll see. So what was the first show where you actually had a credit as a writer?
The first show I had a credit as a writer was Mad TV. So I left Late Night with Conan O'Brien.
Another great show.
And some of the folks who were working on Late Night with Conan O'Brien at the time moved to the West Coast at the same time I moved to the West Coast, which was right after I graduated from college. And so I just kept in touch with those people via telephone, and I think there was email back then, and was able to get a job on that show as a writer's assistant. And as part of being a writer's assistant and getting promoted from writer's assistant to script coordinator, they let me submit pitches and ideas. And so about 2 or 3, I think, of my pitches turned into sketches, and they actually made them for Mad TV.
So do you when you're a freelance writer, do you concentrate on writing multiple episodes for one show, or do you hop around and write episode here for one show, episode there for another show?
Well, as a freelance writer, sometimes I think if you're a freelance writer, you'll typically hop from series to series. So you'll do a series and maybe it'll last for 16 weeks. Then you'll do a series and it'll last for 8 seasons. Then you become a little bit less freelancey, so to speak.
Right.
But when I first started, I basically would do any job that involved writing that they let me do. One of the first shows I did freelance episodes for was Just Shoot Me. So I wrote with my writing partner a couple of episodes of that show, and that was basically just trying to connect with different people and get to know the community. And we were lucky at the time. My writing partner's brother worked on the show, so he was able to get us in the door to allow us to pitch. And the episodes that we pitched just happened to be ones that were accepted, and we got to write them.
So the concept of a writing partner it implies some collaboration on a script.
Yes.
Tell us about that process.
It's beyond collaboration. It's almost like a marriage.
Oh,
in
wow.
fact, I probably, no, this definitely know my writing partner better than I know my wife, which my wife will admit to that. And really, what it comes down to is we had very disparate backgrounds. He grew up in Northern California. I grew up on the East Coast. We had different comedy shows that we liked. But I think that's what ended up making us work, is because we had different skill sets, different backgrounds, and we brought those to bear when we sat down and wrote. At the very beginning, this was made for a very contentious relationship because he liked certain things that I didn't like. And sort of hashing that stuff out, and it's literally like a marriage or like a relationship where you have to figure out how you can make that work.
So do you actually sit down together like Ira Gershwin and George, or do you trade drafts, or how does that process work?
That's how it began. Is we would sit literally next to one another right in front of the computer, and every word that was written, we would say, I don't like that word. Okay, I like that word. And then as we just grew tired of literally being with each other all the time, we decided to divide and conquer a little bit. And so, one of us would work on a scene, and while another one worked on another scene, and then we would come together and read each other's scenes and give each other feedback on them. And then it even progressed as we got into producing, where I took on a different role than he did. So I would do more of the story conception and the pre-production of things. And he actually loves to sit in front of a computer and write.
The dialogue. Yeah.
He would do the dialogue. He would write the drafts. So our relationship kind of evolved as we discovered what we liked about being in the business about ourselves, if that makes sense.
That's a very interesting process.
Yeah.
So one of the shows that you worked on as a writer is the WB series Modern Men.
Yep.
Right? And we actually have a clip from that show, which is a good introduction to it. But can you set up the clip for us and tell us what we're about to see?
So we had just written on a few different shows, freelance episodes as staff writers, executive story editors. We sort of climbed up the ladder, and we had the opportunity to develop our own show. And so when my writing partner and I sat down, we were trying to think what would be a good show. And at the time, we were sort of struggling in our relationships with women, and we realized that perhaps women, kind of run the show a little bit more than we thought that they would. Our fathers tended to kind of wear the pants in their households, in our households. And so the show is about three young men who are unlucky in love. They've struck out a number of times, and they realize that maybe that they're going to have to sort of figure out how to be in a relationship a little bit better. So they go and see a life coach. So the clip you're about to see, it sets up how each of the guys who are the stars of the show, why they are unlucky in love. So there are just three little vignettes that show that.
Very good. Let's watch.
I don't usually do that on a first date.
Oh, gosh, me neither.
What are you doing?
Nothing.
Were you just gonna sleep with me and then sneak out?
No. Were you?
I live here.
Look, Carrie.
Katie.
Oh, boy.
Hey, Allie. So, guess who got us a reservation at Rosebud? Yes, Allie, I know we're divorced, but I'm not seeing anybody, and you're not seeing anybody, so... Oh, you are seeing somebody. His name's Hector. Oh, hi, Hector. I'm sorry, you're on your way where?
You're breaking up with me because I forgot to get a passport?
You've lost the form 3 times. That's not forgetting. That's you saying you don't want to go to Spain with me.
Oh, fine, I'll get the passport. We'll go to Spain. Arriba! See, I'm already fired up.
Look, it's not just Spain, okay? It's like you have your home and you have your job and you have me, so now you're done trying.
Oh, come on, Lisa. You're not dumping me.
Look, You're a really nice guy.
Oh my God! You're really dumping me. No, Lisa, baby, I can change. I will change. Just tell me exactly what you want.
More.
Okay, it's a little vague, but I'm on it.
Okay, so there is a lot of craft in those little vignettes.
Absolutely.
And just the economy of storytelling and even the visual storytelling, I think, is terrific. So what became of Modern Men?
Modern Men was on for, I believe, 7 episodes on the WB. And then shortly after the last episode ended, the WB went out of business, essentially, and merged with the UPN, and now that is the CW, which is the channel that's on now. And in the merger of the WB and the UPN, this was one of the shows that went by the wayside. Just didn't fit with the programming that they were doing on the CW.
Yeah, it's too bad. It looks like a good show.
It was fun. It was fun to do. It was a great learning experience, and the actors on it were incredibly talented.
Yeah, you've also done work in a whole other genre.
Yes.
You might say reality TV, and you've also done webisodes. And one of them we have a clip from is called Mr. Justice and Powerful Girl. And before we watch that clip, could you just talk a little bit about the difference between working in a sort of the network scripted environment and the sort of making this other kind of piece?
Absolutely. Well, as you saw from the clip, the environment is really contained. You can make lots of mistakes. You can do lots of takes. Typically, in a sitcom, there's about a week of rehearsal that goes into sort of the final performance. And so each of those little vignettes that you saw went through just dozens of revisions. And then on set, you can tweak it here, you can tweak it there. So there's a lot of margin for error. And there's a lot of opportunity to play with lots of different things. If the jokes aren't working, well, let's do 4 other jokes. Right. With reality TV, you're working with real people. And so it makes it difficult to do multiple takes. It's reality TV. You're letting the cameras roll. You're letting things happen as they may. And so your margin for error is a lot smaller. That said, there can be some really happy surprises, so to speak. So things can happen that you never would have expected, that you never would have written. And I think that's what makes reality TV interesting to viewers, or that's one of the things that makes it interesting to viewers, is you just sort of don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And these twists and turns that probably couldn't be conceived in writers' heads happen on screen.
Now, you have a clip from the webisode called Mr. Justice and Powerful Girl. Can you set that clip up for us?
Yep. So this is a documentary show that my partner and I did, and it's about 2 people who fancy themselves as superheroes. And they dress like superheroes, they act like superheroes, and they go out in the real world and help real people. But what we discovered in shooting with them is that they actually need more help themselves. And so what you're going to see is Mr. Justice and Powerful Girl have just gone to therapy to try to help work out their interpersonal problems. And what Mr. Justice has discovered is that really one of the roots of their problems is that he has body image issues from wearing this skin-tight outfit. And so we've come just from the therapy session, and now it's post-therapy session. He's driving away.
Oh, terrific. Okay, let's watch.
Everybody's got it all figured out. Mr. Justice is the problem because I have issues about my body. Hey, asshole. And that's making me insecure. Powerful Girl beat me at this whole therapy mental health game. That's fine. Some good-looking doctor can just sum up my whole life in a few quick snap judgments and tell me I have body issues. Well, I have got a better way to solve it. He didn't do anything about it, but I am going to. I'm Mr. Justice.
Hello, I'm Azzy. Nice to
Azzy.
meet you.
Hi. I thought about ballet dancers as people that are exposed. I got a book, and I thought I would be able to learn about how they deal with those issues. Basically, I realized they don't really have any problems. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it looks to me like he's smuggling some kind of like hybrid, like grapefruit with an apple grafted on. Do you know what I mean?
Right. No, dancers in the professional ballet world do, to put it bluntly, stuff underneath there to make it look more fuller.
Wow. So when I see something that just looks like a fresh baked chicken pot pie there, that's not necessarily natural.
Right. So this is a large. This would be your size.
Great. I know this isn't, I will take the monkey.
The monkey as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to do the lion and the monkey. Yeah.
There you go. You're all
Okay,
set.
and nobody can really see through that. Bought a dance belt, nude color. This is what some of the pros use, and apparently they will sometimes augment what they have down there. To me, it looked like those guys were smuggling eggs across some kind of border, and they had to take an extra large load because it was a dangerous trip. It looked unnatural to me. What the true story is that sometimes they use a dance belt to help themselves out. That's what I was going to do. Now I'm thinking this is ridiculous. Why am I focusing on superficial garbage like this? Why don't I just try to work on the relationship between me and Powerful Girl? It's obvious.
I thought we got some issues straightened out. I thought that you understood that I was only trying to help you. And now you come and do something as immature as this. I'm just not sure that.
Eyes up here.
Whatever.
Okay. So that's terrific.
Very highbrow,
Yeah,
highbrow
very
stuff.
So
Yeah.
that feels improvised. Is it?
Yeah, I mean, the woman in the Capizio store, the dance store, is a real person.
Yeah.
She was the real person
Yep.
who was working there. So, in her mind, this is just another patron who's coming by to buy something, and she's answering as though she would if it were anybody coming by. So everything that happened in that was one
Yeah.
take, and that's the conversation they really had.
Fabulous.
So, yeah.
Of course, she knew something was up.
Well, she didn't know what that he would end up stuffing his pants
Right,
later on.
yeah.
But in that moment, he was trying to be discreet about what he was asking for, and
Yeah.
perhaps other people have asked that before. I don't know.
Yeah. So the culture of working on a show like that is turning the cameras on, basically.
Yeah, it's a lot of turning the cameras on, and in this case, just making the people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Because I think when cameras come up, people's blood pressure rises.
Sure.
They start to get really nervous, and they start to feel like they need to be somebody other than themselves. And I think as a producer, you stand behind the camera or before the camera even rolls, and you just let them know, just do your job, just be yourself. Let's not worry about being funny. Don't look in the camera and start giving a report. Just be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, you tend to get decent scenes.
And you did.
Yeah, well, thank you.
It's
I
terrific.
appreciate that.
So we have some questions from our student audience, I believe.
Do you believe it's who you know and not just what you know?
So it's who you know in the business, not what you know. I do believe that having connections and knowing people is really, really important. But I don't believe that you being somebody who doesn't have any today can't have some tomorrow. I think that there's some people who I've met in the business who have, very, very successful parents, and that's helped them pave the way to get to things maybe a little bit faster than your average person. But there are lots of people who have famous parents that don't end up succeeding because at the end of the day, talent wins. So I certainly think that learning how to network and connect with people and is a really important trait for show business, but I think any business.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Good. Another question, please. Yes, over there.
Hi. Are you interested in working in film as well as TV?
That's a great question. I am not interested in working in film, and here's why. I'm not a director, and in film, generally speaking, the director is the boss. They're the person who gets to say, this is how it's going to be. That's Michael Bay and Martin Scorsese. They're the boss of that production. And in television, it's the executive producer, the head writer of the show, that's the boss. And so in TV, getting to be the boss, I like that. So because I don't feel like I have the skills to be a director, I don't think I'll be able to go into film and be the boss, essentially.
Good. Another question, please. Let's see,
right.
over here in the back.
All right, my name's Trevor. I've always wondered, like, on reality shows, like you just said, how you have to, like, kind of set up the scene, but it has to be natural at the same time. I was wondering, like, do you guys have to, like, sneak the cameras in there or something? Or, like, do you just go in, set up, tell them what you're about to do before you start up? Or, like, ask permission and all that before you, like, set up the shot and all that? Or do you just, like, kind of just show up one day and explain everything, like, on the fly?
Typically speaking, you go and you explain what you're about to do, because a lot of reality shows can be pretty invasive. There's a big crew, there are lots of people coming in. And so if you did that to somebody and they weren't expecting it, they would probably tell you to go away. And ultimately what you want is a good scene that makes sense and that works for your show. I've worked on hidden camera shows. I've worked on much, much smaller reality shows. And so typically you can get away with that in those cases. Obviously in a hidden camera show, you have to get away with it. But in a very, very small reality show, you could probably barge in and start shooting and make that work, because the smaller the footprint you have, the more leeway you'd have to be able to just kind of take people by surprise. Does that make sense?
Do we have another question? Let's see. Yes, ma'am.
What I wanted to know was, did you have to learn how to write funny, or did it just come naturally?
Some people might say I'm still learning how to write funny. I would say that it's something that I learned how to do. I think inherently I have very funny father and mother, so joking around was something that was very much part of my upbringing. And I think from that it made transition into comedy writing a little bit easier maybe. But I think being open to sort of watching a lot of comedy, learning from the writers when I was a writer's assistant, going to comedy clubs, watching stand-up, and just sort of understanding how it worked and the rhythm of jokes, the rhythm of storytelling. So that's a long-winded way of saying, yeah, learning it.
Very good. I think we have time for about one more student question. Yes, sir.
Yes. How has comedy changed since you've entered the business? And is it getting better? Is it getting worse? What do you think?
I think comedy has changed because the barriers to entry are actually smaller. So you can tonight go home and shoot a video of your kitten playing a piano and get 1 million hits, and all of a sudden you've gotten more viewers than some of the shows that I've done. So, I think that's great because it gives people who are your generation coming up through the ranks an opportunity to go out and make the kinds of things that you want to make, low budget, and get an audience pretty easily. And I think that that's for the better, because I think it allows people who maybe don't have the connections that they once did, that other people do, to get in there based on their talent. Because if you're out every day shooting videos, shooting funny videos, chances are something's going to break at some point if you persist long enough. So I think that's a good thing for comedy.
Terrific. Well, we have time for just one quick question from me, and that is, you mentioned producing, and you've made a transition or you've included now producing in your repertoire. Contrast that for me. Do you prefer producing? Do you still want to write? Is it?
Producing and writing, it's sort of a natural evolution. You write for a while and you see some producer producing the thing that you've written and you're enjoying it at the beginning, and then you start to say, hey, I think I could do that a little bit better,
right.
Or you just want to do it, you want to try it. For a writer, really what you're doing day in and day out is writing. You're sitting at your computer, you're writing, you're sitting with a group of other writers and trying to brainstorm ideas, and that's your day in and day out. As a producer, you're not only doing some writing, but you're managing a staff of people. So I guess it would be the equivalent of being a person who makes the pizzas and then the person who manages the pizzeria.
Right.
And I think after managing the pizzeria for a few years, I've sort of enjoyed management. So I think I'll probably stick with producing and leave the writing to the writers who work with me.
But you still get to move the pepperoni a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. More pepperoni.
Yeah.
How many times do I have to tell you?
Well, very good. Well, Aaron Peters, this has been a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so
I really
much for being
appreciate
on
it.
Studio
And
today.
thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm Rick Davis. This is Studio A. Thanks for watching.